Hello and welcome back. This is a video that I've been wanting to make for a very long time, and I finally sat down and did it. So the title is Two Card Combos Are Bad in Draft, and obviously you gotta pick a clickbaity title for YouTube, but this video stemmed from like just a hunch or kind of general gameplay idea that I felt and based my decisions around, but I didn't actually know if the math backed up what I felt during playing the games itself. So I have the background to dive into the mathematics and say, hey, is this mathematically a good idea or a bad idea? So I actually didn't know going into this. I had an idea. You can tell if you've watched my videos before, you can know. I think they're bad, but let's dive into the math and see, are they bad? And so I'm going to investigate three different situations here, just to give you a sense of what range of combos there are. So Emrakul through the breach, I'm just using this as an example of a two-card combo where both cards do nothing outside of the combo. So that's kind of the most extreme situation. Then we have Thespian Stage Dark Depths is an example of like Thespian Stage doesn't really cost you anything to put into your deck. It usually replaces a land. So this is like if one card's kind of good and then one card is useless. And then Candelabra Tawnos Clearing Academy mostly stemmed from the quantity of comments I get telling me, but Caleb, Candelabra is good with Academy. It's so in this case, it's like a two-card combo where one card is really good on its own, like Academy is busted. So is it worth putting a dead draw in your deck to improve the strength of an already broken card, essentially? And I want to put a disclaimer, this video is mostly looking at two-card combos. So like the question is adding Thespian Stage Dark Depths to a random deck a good idea? Is putting Emrakul through the breach in a random deck that I guess has red mana a good idea? And then Candelabra of Tawnos, Tellurian Academy is a little bit more different because you can't just put Tellurian Academy in a random deck. But I'm kind of using this more as an illustrative example of just assuming that Tellurian Academy is a good card, like assuming you're playing a Tellurian Academy deck where it works, is adding Candelabra to the Academy deck a good idea? And so this all comes from the initial hypothesis, my hunch, is that adding dead draws into your deck doesn't overcome the benefits you get from having the combo. So in this case, in this model, the way we're modeling this, I'm treating these as if they do literally nothing. And that is true most of the time. Now, you could make an argument Candelabra can fix your mana. That's true, but would you put Candelabra of Tawnos in your deck to fix mana? No, you wouldn't. Dark Depths technically you can win with. Maybe one person ever has leveled up Dark Depths enough to win a game in Vintage Cube. So for this model and for the discussion we're having, these are completely dead draws. There is another thing I want to point out when I said I'm only looking at two-card combos. This is different than like an archetype. So for example, if you have like Through the Breach, Shallow Grave, Sneak Attack, Show and Tell, Channel, that's suddenly becoming more of an archetype deck than it is just a two-card combo, and that doesn't really apply to today's discussion. I will talk about tutors later on in the video, so we get a little bit into that, but this is more focusing just on, A plus B type situation. And so in this discussion, there's really four things that can happen. You can draw neither card, you can draw one of your two cards, and then the other one of the two cards, and then you can draw both. So we had to pick some number to model just so I can put, numbers on the screen for you. So for all the probabilities I'm showing, this is turn 3 or after seeing about 10 cards. And this, I think, is a pretty good estimate of like, you want to be doing something by turn 3 in most games of Vintage Cube. So it gives you like a decent understanding of what's going on. I'll have graphs that show kind of what the probabilities are as turns go on later, but I just needed something to put on the screen. So by turn 3, 55% of the time, you're not going to see either part of your combo. 19% of the time, you'll see one piece but not the other for each one. So I guess like 38%, you'll see one but not the other. And then 5.7% of the time, you'll just assemble your combo on turn 3. And it's worth noting, this isn't like you've achieved the combo, done the thing. This is just you've seen these two cards somewhere in your deck. So this could include games where you've drawn both of them, you're on the draw, and your opponent kills you turn 1. This could include games where you scryed one to the bottom, right? Stuff like that. So if you don't see any cards, we're just saying the baseline win rate of a deck is going to be 50%. We don't know what the deck you're playing is, and the average win rate across everybody is going to be 50%. Thespian stage, for this model, I'm just saying it is also a 50% win rate because you're essentially just replacing a land. You could argue that it's slightly lower because you're going to replace like a basic forest with something that adds colorless, but the activated ability makes it kind of a wash. So for now, we're just saying 50%. Maybe it's like 49, something like that. And then this is really the crux of my discussion, which is that we're going to treat a dead draw, something that does nothing, as if you've mulliganed. And there's quite a bit of data out there. The one that I got was from 17 lands, saying that a mulligan, your first mulligan, since the London mulligan anyway, is about a 12% win rate decrease compared to not mulliganing. So if you want to attack any part of this model, this is probably the most one to discuss. So definitely let me know what you think of this. But that's how I'm treating it. A dead draw is the same as if you've mulliganed, 12% win rate. If you have different ideas, you can just plug in different numbers and see what the math tells you. But right now we're treating that if you draw this card, it's like you've mulliganed. So it's a 38% win rate when you draw this card alone. And so the question is, what win rate do we need to get from the 2-card combo to overcome this win rate decrease from an effective mulligan when we have dead draws in our hands? And so we can set up an equation. We have 55% of the time, 50% win rate. 19% of the time, 50% win rate. Another 19% of the time, 38% win rate. And then 5.7% of the time, we don't know, we're going to solve for X. And so the baseline win rate of the deck in our model is 50%. So we need to solve for X such that we're at least achieving or beating the baseline win rate of the deck. Or to put it another way, how often do we have to win with the Thespian Stage Dark Depths combo in our deck when we draw it to make putting these 2 cards in our deck worth it to overcome the cost of having Dark Depths in your deck? And so if you work out the math, you'd have to win 94% of games when you see both of these 2 cards to make it just neutral. This isn't saying these are good cards. This is just saying if you're winning 94% of the time that you see these 2 cards, it's the same as if you just didn't put them in your deck. So above 94% would mean this is a good decision to put into your deck. And I want to remind you, this is just games you see them, not games you put them in play and assemble it. You could top deck Thespian Stage on the last turn, your opponent kills you. You could be on the draw and your opponent kills you on turn 1. They could Swords to Plowshares your Merit Lage, stuff like that. So what I'm saying is it's unlikely you're going to win 94% of games that you've assembled this combo. And so the next question people are going to ask is, that was for seeing 10 cards or turn 3. So we've got a graph of how often you would have to win to make putting the combo in your deck make sense as a function of how many cards you're going to see in a game. So if you see every card in your deck, if you've seen every card, you only have to win 50% of the time because you're going to have the combo every single time. But within the range of normal games, the average is around 84%, which I think this is surprising to me. It's actually better than I thought it would be, but it's still an interesting discussion of like an 84% game win rate. This isn't matched. This is a single game, is still incredibly high. And I don't know, let me know in the comments. To me, this feels too high to be worth putting it in a random deck. Now, we'll discuss tutors and things like that later, which can change this quite a bit. But my gut intuition says that you shouldn't do this. Now let's get into a maybe more cut and dry case, combos with 2 dead draws. So exact same situation, but now both cards are bad when you draw them on their own. The math is the same, except now these are both 38% win rates. And with 2 dead draws, you'd have to win 132% of games that you assemble your combo in order to make this worthwhile. And that's obviously impossible, which means the benefit of this is literally can never be enough. These 2 could just say you win the game on them, and it wouldn't be worth putting these dead draws in your deck. And if you look at the average over turns, it's still terrible. 116% win rate required just to break even. And you have to remember, none of this is even considering how hard it is to cast through the breach, how much mana it takes. This is literally saying you see these two cards and you win the game on the spot. It's still not even good enough to, to make it worth putting the cards in your deck. That's actually kind of ridiculous, but that's what the math says. The cost of having these dead draws is so high that it's just not worth it. And then the last one is really interesting to me. So adding a combo to an already good deck. So this one was really spawned out of YouTube comments. I don't really know where it came from. I don't know why Candelabra's in the cube, but people like it somewhere, I guess. I've hated this card since the day I saw it. I don't even play it in High Tide, but it is good with Tolarian Academy, right? If you have Academy in play and you have Candelabra, you'd be like, okay, Candelabra gives me an extra 4 mana. That's true. But the problem is, this does nothing besides combo with Tolarian Academy. And Academy is already a good card. And that's the important point that we're going to discuss here. So we have the same 4 situations to look at with this 2-card combo. But the difference here is we're basically saying Academy is a good card that already does great stuff on its own. So if you're playing a deck with Academy, I'm going to say that the games that you draw Academy, you're going to have a 10% win rate above games when you don't draw Academy. So we're just, for the sake of modeling, we'll say you have a 60% win rate when you just draw Tolarian Academy. And you'll see later why this win rate doesn't, this number doesn't matter in its specifics, but we just need something to demonstrate how this works. So now we need to establish a new baseline win rate of the deck. 75% of the time, you're not going to see Academy in the top 10. 25% you will, and that's a 60% win rate. So now the baseline of a deck with Academy is 52.5% overall win rate. So it's a good card in a deck. You could also normalize this to be 50 still, and then this would be like 55%, and this would be like 45%. The math would be similar in direction, but not necessarily similar in magnitude. But that's an interesting thing that I just thought of right now you could look at. But it's basically like a normalization factor away from what we're doing here. So the math, basically the same as what we've been doing, except in this case, 60% win rate. And the difference here is now our baseline win rate of the deck with just Academy in this is 52.5. So you got to remember, in this specific situation, you're going to play Academy in an Academy deck no matter what. It's not... The other 2 cases was a question of, do I add these 2 cards to a random deck? This question is now, do I add this 1 card to an Academy deck? So we're already playing this. The deck playing Academy wins 52% of the time. Does adding Candelabra boost that win rate up? How much do you need to win when you assemble this combo to make it worthwhile? You work the math out. You'd have to win more than every single game that you assembled this combo to make it worthwhile. And we know that's not happening. That's mathematically impossible. Now, the math of the graph is a bit messy because as you're seeing more cards, the odds of assembling the combo goes up. That's true. But also the win rate of the base deck goes up because the odds of drawing Academy in general goes up. So this rate of 104 is actually sort of constant across how many cards you've seen, because you have these 2 different scaling effects sort of counteracting each other. It does get a little bit better, but it's still going to stay fairly high because you're going to have to win more with Candelabra the more likely you see this combo, but then you're also more likely to see Academy, so the base win rate of the deck goes up, basically. So this is actually like kind of the worst. This is worse than adding Thespian Stage and Dark Depths to your deck. And that was actually surprising to me how bad of a decision putting Candelabra in a Tolarian Academy deck is. But it makes sense when you think about it a little bit, because at least with the model we're using, Tolarian Academy is a good card on its own. And that fact gives diminishing returns to how much Candelabra can improve that, right? If you think about, if Tolarian Academy is already adding 7 mana, and Candelabra puts you up to 12 mana, how important is that really? If 7 mana wins you 80% of games, is 12 mana going to win you? It can only win you an extra 20% of games. And we can think of the extreme case here. If Tolarian Academy is the best card ever, if you're winning 100% of your games with Tolarian Academy, and no matter how good the combo of Candelabra plus Academy is, Candelabra can only ever make things worse because Academy already wins the moment you draw it. So this is sort of the definition of a win more scenario. And in general, I wouldn't recommend running it. Now, there is one caveat here, which is Academy decks do require some number of artifacts. And so if you're short on artifacts, I could see putting Candelabra in the deck just because you need an artifact to go with Tolarian Academy. But I think this isn't something special to Candelabra that you would play any artifact at all in that situation. So that question's a little bit different because now it's, well, I need to enable my Academy. The question I'm asking, which is what most people say, is they just say Candelabra and Academy are good together. And those are very different discussions to have. Like, I would play Chromatic Star, but Chromatic Star does something besides literally nothing. So, all that to being said, don't do this. It's not great. If you have literally any artifact that does anything else, your win rate will be higher playing that over Candelabra. Tutors do change the equation, and actually quite a bit. So a demonic tutor is the best example. It can find either half of the combo, and it takes it from a 5.7% chance of assembling to a 14.8% chance of assembling the combo, which is huge, much higher than I thought it would be, actually. So when you run through all of the math with the demonic tutor in the deck, it is more favorable. So putting Thespian Sage Dark Depths and demonic tutor in your deck makes the required win rate to make adding this make sense go down to about 70%, which I still think is high because the top pros in Magic can get like a 68% match win rate, which would mean their game win rate would be lower because a match is best of 3, so it mitigates variance. So winning a given game 70% of the time is quite high. And in this case, you're also games that you have to cast Demonic Tutor, which is now a spell you have to resolve. They could counter it, they could Thoughtseize you, that kind of thing. So I am surprised at how good this one is. I think there's a discussion to be had around if this is a good idea. If you have a second tutor, I would definitely do it. So Thespian Sage Dark Depths, Demonic Tutor, Crop Rotation, go for it. In this case, I would be hesitant, but cautionarily optimistic. Emrakul through the Reach, Demonic Tutor, or a 2-card combo where these two are dead draws gets substantially better when you run a Demonic Tutor, but 86% is still, like, you're not going to be winning 86% of these games. So I wouldn't do this with just one tutor. 2 tutors, it would go down to something like 79 or 75, and that's quite a bit better. So maybe consider it then, but as it stands, I probably wouldn't do this. And then Candelabra Academy Demonic Tutor is also still generally not a good idea. The problem here, again, is it's not do you add these 3 to a deck, it's if you have Academy and Demonic Tutor, do you add Candelabra to that deck? Because now you can tutor for whichever half of the combo you're missing. But, like, a Demonic Tutor Academy deck's already so good that Candelabra doesn't help you that much in that case. You're going to be tutoring for Academy or a payoff some other time. It's generally not a good idea. And the last thing to investigate is just backup copies, or you could think of another way, like something that tutors for one half of the combo. So Hexmage, Dark Depths are good when you draw those two. Hexmage, Thespian Stage don't really do anything together. So as you would expect, this is about half of the benefit you get of running a tutor effect. So we go from 5.77% win rate to 10.3, and it's pretty modest combo probability increase. But the results are much worse. I was more approximate with this math because we're just trying to get like a sense of it, but Thespian Sage Dark Depths Hexmage is around 74%. Win rate required to break even after seeing 10 cards, basically. Which I still probably wouldn't suggest doing, but it's, again, worth discussing at that point. Emrakul through the Reach Sneak Attack, you'd have to win every single time you draw these cards, which is just never happening, and same with Candelabra. And I couldn't think of a card that's comparable to Tolarian Academy, so I just modeled it as if you had 2 Tolarian Academies in your deck. And, you know, you'd have to win 100% of the time you assemble the combo. That's not happening either. So basically, if you take anything away from this video, just let it be this. The cost of putting a dead draw in your deck is very high. 2-card combos aren't bad in their own right. The problem with 2-card combos is when they displace other cards that could be good in your deck. So when the opportunity cost is low. Thespian Stage Dark Depths, you get Thespian Stage essentially for free. Things are more favorable because now you're only running one dead draw. If you can find a 2-card combo where both cards are good in your deck, just run it. That's totally fine. The problems start to arise when you're putting dead draws into a deck that could otherwise just have playable things in them. Even if you have tutors and stuff, it's generally not a good idea until you reach some critical mass where that's your archetype. This is especially interesting for people probably coming from Constructed, where you have so much redundancy that these type of strategies are good. But Cube is a different beast completely. You don't have this built-in redundancy most of the time. So anyway, that's the video, that's the crux. There are a couple different limitations with this method. The first is that mulligans in Vintage Cube might hit differently. That 12% win rate was for like all formats on Arena, I think. So it could be higher, it could be lower. Just pick numbers, put it into the math, and see what it comes out to, really. And then also mulligan win rates could be deck dependent. So I could see like some decks might perform better on mulligans than other. If you're all in on combo, maybe that's true. So that 12% could be, it could change. And then the last one I think is also a pretty legitimate discussion, is that a dead draw isn't the same as mulligans, especially lately when they're giving so many cards like the looting ability. The dead draw, you do literally have the card in your hand, so you can discard it, trigger landfall, trigger artifact count, things like that. So this is probably the biggest issue with this model. And if someone has a better, way to model having a dead card in hand versus a mulligan, I'm open to it. That's just the best that I could come up with. And there's probably a couple other things that I haven't thought of into like why this method might not be perfect, but I think it does give us at least the starting point of a mathematical framework to talk about these type of discussions and point us in the direction that I think my intuition was pushing me before, but I'm surprised at how relatively reasonable Thespian Stage Dark Depths was, and I was actually surprised at how terrible Emrakul Through the Breach or even Channel Emrakul, that kind of thing, is. So hopefully at least the magnitude of the differences can give you a sense of what makes sense and what doesn't. The specifics, we'll keep the discussion going. Anyway, that's it. The crux, the takeaway here is friends don't let friends chase bad combos. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, my more analytic takes into Cube, or you just like my gameplay style, I spent 3 years focusing this type of energy into making Algomancy as good of a game as I possibly could. And so I solved the problem of first player advantage in this game. So there's no individual turn structure. It's not like we balanced it out by giving, the player a treasure token or something. There's fundamentally no first player in the game. So it's not like first player advantage is just not possible in Algomancy. We solved the problem of Mana Screw and Flood, and it's a self-contained box. So there's no expensive cards. You just get it once. You can cube draft with your friends. It's a lot of fun. And I think the thing that I put most of my effort into doing for Algomancy is making it a game where you as the player can actually have control over how you want to play the game rather than being at the mercy of what cards your deck decides to give you. So you get to draft your hand in game, and that gives you so many options where you have so many options in front of you and you can choose a game plan based on what you want to do. Anyway, if you're interested in that at all, go check it out, algomancy.io. I would appreciate it a lot. If not, just enjoy the videos, and I'll see you next time.